Return to Monkey Island reminds us why point-and-click adventure games are still great, good writing and voice acting are invaluable, and that Guybrush Threepwood is still the worst name ever for a pirate. Return to Monkey Island is series creator Ron Gilbert's own personal return to the Monkey Island franchise, since he made the first two games in the 90s, so it's a fitting title.
Too late to start doing your job now, Swabby!
The filling of any point-and-click sandwich is its narrative and its puzzles. I love the feeling of traversing a story that's punctuated by riddles and mysteries, and Return to Monkey Island does a terrific job of pacing these out.
Threepwood, I might have known you'd be wrapped up in this.
The general plot is simple. Guybrush Threepwood must find the secret of Monkey Island before his arch-nemesis LeChuck beats him to it. But just like any great adventure, things start to get complicated. As usual, you walk Guybrush around various scenes, examining, picking up and using items to solve puzzles and progress the story. This adventure game formula is unchanged since the first game in the series, and fans wouldn't have it any other way.
How do you like my mop? It's custom built.
One pitfall of point-and-click adventure games is the frustration you feel when you don't know what to do. But luckily, Return to Monkey Island avoids this like a bad case of scurvy. Our intrepid protagonist Guybrush Threepwood has a handy hint book in his inventory that dishes out hints in tiers. If you just want a tiny bit of guidance, click on a hint and you'll get a vague description of what to do. If it's still unclear, you can keep asking for more hints and it'll spell out the next step more clearly each time. This is great because it doesn't spoil the solutions to any puzzles unless you want it to. I've got to admit, I relied on the hint book on some of the puzzles that continued to confound me. But the difficulty level feels just right. You want to be stumped in a game like this because when you finally crack the solution, you get that satisfying aha moment, followed closely by a ha-ha moment. What I loved most about the puzzles was that they were goofy and almost always made me laugh. One of my favourite parts was when I had to steal an eye patch from the Pirate Museum, which was guarded by the most sophisticated security system known to pirate kind, a parrot.
Whoa! I'd better fold this and put it in storage. Then I can figure out what's wrong with the lock.
One thing I thought I'd miss from these games was the different interaction options that classic point-and-click games would offer. I remember not only being able to look and use objects, but also push, pull, open, and close them. While playing Return to Monkey Island, I realized there's only really two things you can do to a door. Open it and close it, and you're only ever doing one of those actions at a time. I still did miss those occasions of trying to do something stupid with an item and getting a reaction from Guybrush. Here, the game just visually shows you that an item can't be used in that way, rather than leaving us something for you to discover. On PC, Return to Monkey Island has made all the interaction way more streamlined in that left-clicking on an object will make an observation of it, and right-clicking an object will interact with it. If you click and drag an object on something, it'll interact with it using the object. You can observe objects in your inventory with left click, and you can drag objects on top of others to combine them if you need to. It's not a simpler system, it's just far more efficient, and I love that the entire focus is to play the game. Anyway, back to my sandwich analogy. If the filling is the narrative and puzzles, then what's the bread? Well, the art style, obviously. Note, if you're one of those fans that didn't like the new visual style of Return to Monkey Island, then I'm gonna have to keel-haul you, because I loved it. The colors are vibrant, the characters are strangely proportioned, and yes, it's a dramatic departure from the original series and its pixels, but it has staying power.
Splendid.
Each environment is gorgeous and the character designs are all brimming with a unique visual clarity. If you were to line up all the silhouettes of every single character in that game, I'd be able to name every single one. If you're clinging to the old art style because that's what you're used to, then I get it. Return style is certainly more cartoonish and abstract compared to the original, but it's also so rich and eye-catching. Every environment bristles with detail, and they even incorporate the hyper-detailed close-up shots that were used in the first few games.
What does that nameplate say? The one there, on my desk.
One gripe that I had was that if you play the game using subtitles, sometimes they're so large that they block the beautiful art. Of course, with the wonderful voice acting, you could always disable the subtitles, but having subtitles turned on reminded me of old school point-and-click games. Subtitles also make games like this way more accessible, so to see them blocking the art is a little frustrating. The characters in this point-and-click adventure sandwich are the spices and sauces. They give this game a tangy zip and brighten everything up, down to their character design to their superbly performed voice acting.
I think my pancreas is broken. Possibly also my spleen? And my gallbladder. Whatever that is.
If you were to ask me how I thought a lethargic demon pirate whose head was aflame with undying demon fire sounded, I probably wouldn't have guessed French. His name is Flambe, and he is hands down my favourite character in the game.
But hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
You want me to scratch your back?
He's a lazy flame demon whose two priorities in life are eating and sleeping. Relatable. Also, his head is eternally on fire. Very cool.
Keep up the bad work.
Always.
For point-and-click games that are almost 95% dialogue, it's super important for the voice acting to be good. In worst-case scenarios, bad voice acting can turn you off from playing these point-and-click games, but luckily, Return to Monkey Island shows you how voice acting in games is supposed to be done.
There is no such thing as the scurvy gods.
Well, then why is there scurvy? Answer me that!
Most of the original cast from the previous games made a comeback, which is fantastic for the old school fans, but since I hadn't played those old games, I avoided any sort of bias. Even still, I thought the voices were perfect. Whether you're hearing LeChuck explode in an anti-Guybrush tirade or giggling at the ramblings of a neurotic accountant, you can tell that the voice actors were having fun when they were in the recording booth.
Someone messed up, and I think I know who.
Now, I started this review by using a sandwich analogy, but kinda lost it along the way, like dropping a lime overboard. And that's because I was too enamored with Return to Monkey Island's charming adventure and characters. But that kind of fits. Return to Monkey Island has a knack for helping you forget the heavy-handed analogies that plague your life, and instead focus on treasure hunting, island hopping, and figuring out how a mop will solve all your problems. Play! Arr!